I am so sorry I couldn't be with you. I hope that many of you are already having a great time at our personal disaster preparedness event at Front Site. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Bob McQueenie for very generously arranging that for us, and to encourage you to speak to Dr. McQueenie. Would you please stand up, Bob? I saw you here. He has a table outside where you can buy a membership in Front Site for yourself or a member of your family. This helps to support DDP. And I think it's... And some T-shirts also, yes. I recently had an opportunity to speak at a meeting of the Claire Booth Luce Society, which has many bright, attractive young women, one of whom gave a little talk about how afraid she was on campus going to her car at night. And the university suggested a cell phone and a whistle, and she thought she had a right to a more effective self-defense tool. And I said, it's not just a right. Your life is very precious. It's your duty. It's your responsibility to defend yourself. So I hope you might want to take advantage of this opportunity. As you know, there are many dangerous things going on in the world today. I'm not sure I understand very much about them, so I thought I would stick to a little bit of history and perhaps some reflections on how that affects us today. I'd like to talk to you about Carthage 2 millennia later. You've probably heard the expression Carthago delenda est, which Cato concluded every single speech that he gave to the Roman Senate, no matter what else he was talking about. Carthage must be destroyed, not conquered, not subjugated, not compromised with, but deleted, wiped out, exterminated. So I wonder why that was. That was not the usual Roman thing. The Punic Wars, that I'm not even sure I could have told you what they were a month ago, lasted for about a century, from about 264 BC until about 146 BC, which sounds like a long time. But consider, World War I ended in 1914. And I'm not sure that this cycle of war is over yet. Historians may be talking about something like the Punic Wars with respect to this. And I think there are many lessons to be learned from this. This was war on a scale that was seldom rivaled before modern times. In the First Punic War, there were 300 oared warships and more than 100,000 sailors. Rome started this out with no navy at all and had to build a navy from scratch and learn how to do it. Then there were armies of hundreds of thousands. Countrysides were ravaged. And Americans are very poorly educated about history. I think that I had some vague concept of a guy named Hannibal who drove some elephants over the Alps with his army, and that's about it. But there's a lot more to it than that. And I would suggest if you're into military history, you should read this book, The Punic Wars, in 2000, which tells all about it, how he got those elephants across the River Po. One of the handlers drowned, but all the elephants made it. But it was really quite an amazing feat. Hannibal's name meant the grace of Baal. He has been compared with Napoleon and Robert E. Lee as being one of the world's most brilliant tacticians ever, but who, although he was undefeated in the battles that he fought, ultimately lost the war. He's been studied by Napoleon, by von Schlieffen, by Rommel, by Norman Schwarzkopf. He's studied in military academies today because of his brilliant tactics. But yet, as G.K. Chesterton pointed out, Carthage had one enemy, and that was Carthage. They were only interested in maybe their material advantages, and they disregarded his pleas for reinforcements. He was starved and abandoned by the financial geniuses of his home. A few things about Carthage. It was founded allegedly about 814 BC by a Phoenician princess named Elissa or Dido, who came from Tyre. A lot of the Carthaginian culture came from Tyre and Sidon, which were cities in what is today Lebanon. It was the dominant sea power in the Western Mediterranean. It was extremely wealthy from both commerce and from agriculture, highly civilized, aristocratic, much more civilized than Rome at the time. Its culture was pretty much obliterated, as was the history. We don't know anything about the history of the wars from the Punic perspective. It relied on professional soldiers, many of them mercenaries, and their concept of war was that you should get the best deal. You should beat up on the enemy until he was willing to capitulate and give you a really good deal so you could make money from it, and yet not be worried about further difficulties. The Roman Republic at that time, and it was just a republic, the Roman Empire really did not begin until after the Punic Wars. It was founded about 50 years later, around 753 BC, and mostly was on the Italian peninsula at the time. It relied a lot on citizen soldiers, that when their home was threatened, the soldiers came to its defense. And please remember, with regard to front sight, that today in America, the war is coming to us sometimes in our homes, whether or not we need to go to the war. So you need to be prepared. There were a lot of independent farmers that were the backbone of the Republic, and the Romans sought for total victory. Well, there was this battle at Cannae. This was after Hannibal brought hundreds of elephants, tens of thousands of troops, his cavalry horses, his pack horses across the Po River and across the Alps, part of it in the wintertime, lost about half of them. And it was fought August 2nd in 216 BC, one of the most carefully studied battles in all of history. Because, due to Hannibal's brilliance, the greatly outnumbered Carthaginians massacred the largest Roman army ever fielded. There were 50,000 corpses piled up in a single day in an area of a few square miles. Rome should have been crushed. The situation of Rome was hopeless. However, in a Churchillian fashion, Rome refused to give up. Hannibal continued to ravage and march through Italy, 15 years of destruction and also of treachery. One of the things he did was bribe and cajole and get people to commit treason against Rome. One perspective on this comes from a book called The Everlasting Man by G.K. Chesterton, who lived 1874 to 1936, a British journalist, an author of many things. And he talked about the war of the gods and the demons. And Carthage was dominated by a religion of fear and compulsion. There was a lot of human sacrifice, especially including infants. There might be 100 infants thrown into a furnace in a day to get Moloch to perform for Carthage. In archaeological digs, hundreds of tiny skeletons have been found of infants who were sacrificed. The gods were of the state. The culture was purely materialistic. It worshipped dead things, gold, and forces of nature. And in the city of Tyre, from which a lot of the Carthaginian culture came, it left very little of art and nothing of poetry. But Rome was somewhat different. Rome was not purely materialistic. Rome fought for something else. In Rome, the gods were of hearth and home, and although the god might eat a bit of the family dinner, it wasn't going to eat the children. Family bonds were sacred. Rome fought when all hope was gone because of just something in their soul. They hated the hateful soul of Carthage. And Rome was, as it had a lot to do with family bonds, the Carthaginian religion had a lot of, a lot of orgies and other things like that as part of their worship. The temple priestesses were really prostitutes. But there's a little more to the history of Carthage that I think makes it perhaps a little more relevant to our times. That it was that Dido's great aunt, the founder of Carthage, her great aunt was a Phoenician princess and a priestess of Baal, and her name was Jezebel. She was married to a king of a backward, puritanical kingdom to the south, King Ahab of Israel. And you can read all about this in the first book of Kings. She was a strong woman, and she was determined to bring her more cultivated ways to this backward place. In other words, to achieve a fundamental transformation. She was so powerful that she even had her own court. And she went about trying to destroy this backward Jewish religion. She killed the prophets, and in 858, sometime a little before Carthage was founded, Elijah fled from her. And when Ahab died and her son Joram became king, she remained extremely powerful as the dowager king and intended to continue to dominate the religion and culture and politics of Israel. And then something unexpected happened. Do you think that this person, Jezebel, reminds you of anybody? It's a very interesting book. It's a New York Times bestseller by a Messianic Jew named Jonathan Cahn, who is a biblical scholar, a book called The Paradigm. He previously wrote a book called The Harbinger, which is about the biblical parallels to the events of 9/11. And he goes through the events of King Ahab's reign and Jezebel and some things that have happened concerning the election of 2016, when something unexpected happened, something that was just inconceivable happened. And I think some of the people who come to our meetings may have had something to do with that. But G.K. Chesterton, back before the time of World War II, raised the question of, is Carthage really destroyed? Or is there a cosmic war still going on that is kind of represented a little bit by the cosmic vision of Carthage and of Rome? Chesterton wrote, "It may sound fanciful to say that men we meet at tea tables or garden parties are secretly worshippers of Baal or Moloch. But this sort of commercial mind has its own cosmic vision, and it is the vision of Carthage." So just some reflections about how history and our current times may rhyme, that there's really nothing new under the sun. It's a very long, long war between these two cosmic visions. And I think that we are seeing more and more that there is a war on to destroy America as a free, sovereign nation, and more than that, to destroy Western civilization, which is founded to a large extent on the civilization of Greece and Rome. One goal of this Carthaginian vision is death to a number of human beings who are seen by many as a plague on planet Earth. I think Robert Zubrin at previous meetings has pointed out how anti-human a lot of the so-called environmentalist movement is, and that it really thinks there are too many of us, that I'm told that Bill Gates, a great philanthropist, has in mind that we should get rid of a huge percentage of the human population one way or another. And of course, infants are among the very frequent victims today. The demons, however, of this vision are not localized conveniently in a geographic location like Carthage. They seem to be everywhere. And as with the Punic Wars, the ramifications of the outcome of this battle are going to be profound and last for millennia. And I think that you are very privileged today to be in a room full of warriors on the right side of this. Some of us are mere foot soldiers, but we have some very brilliant generals among our groups. Please take the opportunity to get acquainted with the people who are with us. And I hope that you will get much of scientific and other types of information that will help you in standing up for the right side in the ongoing war. Thank you.